Hello. If you are in the midst of world building, you're writing your fantasy novel, you're thinking up all of these really fun and cool premises for your story, you have a few characters in mind that you want to build on, you have a vague idea of your magic system, and you're starting to accumulate all of these cool ideas, but then you're like, where on earth am I going to store all of this information? How am I going to organize it? How am I going to save it in a way that I can come back to it later while I'm actually writing my story? If any of that sounds like where you are right now in your world building or writing journey, you have landed on the right video. If you're new here, my name is Rita. I'm an aspiring fantasy author who's currently working on a novel that's loosely based on the story of Mulan. I also have a degree in English literature, which means that I spent years and years analyzing hundreds of novels, plot structure, character development, all of that fun stuff. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about my own experience world building and how I was able to keep everything organized in a neat system so that I did not lose my mind. So the system that I currently used is Notion, and I built my own template in Notion. But the reason why I did that is because when I was looking for other systems for world building, I looked into, Obsidian, I looked into World Anvil, I looked into just basic Google Docs that's properly organized. I used all of these things and nothing quite fit my needs. Either it was overly complicated and the learning curve was way too steep to even bother, or a lot of the apps, like the world building apps out there, are a little bit outdated. So the user interface, like what I see when I open the app, is kind of ugly. And to me, aesthetics matter a lot, especially when I'm being creative. And if something doesn't look good, I don't want to use it. Okay, and that might sound shallow. I don't care. That's just how it is for me. So I tried a bunch of different things. This is not going to be a comparison video. I have a comparison video for world building apps. I can link that in the description if you're interested in that later. But so none of those worked for me. And coming back to Notion, Notion was an app that I was already using at work. And I realized, you know what, I can take this system and I can, it's meant to run your business on, but I was like, I can use all of these things to build my own template in here for world building. And I can build it exactly for my specific needs. So I built that. And it was a place where I could basically dump all of my world building and plot ideas. So it was like a brain dump location, but it wasn't just one page where I just threw everything and hope for the best and hope that I would find the information later on. It was somewhere where I could dump everything in an organized way that would be super easy to find later on, and everything is interconnected so that when I update one thing, everything else gets updated as well. So I don't need to like run around between tabs or between like pages to try to update everything one by one. Everything is done automatically. So I'm going to be showing you exactly what I rely on, the databases that I rely on daily while I'm writing, so that there are no inconsistencies, so that I don't, like, if I've forgotten what something is, I can find it immediately. Ooh, that was nice. Ooh, that was nice. I don't know if you can hear that in the mic, but that was like a really nice. Anyways, so yeah. So I'm going to talk to you about what I use daily when I'm writing my novel, what I rely on to avoid any inconsistencies and to not lose my mind. There are a couple of core sections that I always have open while I'm writing. The first one, of course, is my character database. All of my main characters live in there, all of their traits, their wants, their needs, their age, everything. Everything is housed in there. So I have that on standby while I'm writing in case I need to go back and figure out like, oh, like what was this character's eye color? What was her hair color? What was like all of that information. So I have that open, and actually I'll show you exactly what that looks like. I'll open up the character database. So I'm not going to show you my own character database just because I don't want to reveal those details about my story online, just in case somebody tries to steal the information. Not that I'm saying like that I'm so amazing that everybody's going to steal my ideas, but I don't want to have that out there. So I'm just going to show you like the blank template that I have. And actually the character database, I have that as a separate template that I offer for free. So I will link the free version of that template in the description below. So just to go through it with you, this is what it looks like. And if you click into the character, you can see that there's a spot for it updating like the species and race, the main role of the character, the arc, the hometown, the magic system that they use. So this is like linked to the magic systems database, but the free version does not have the interlinking. Like you can just write out the description of the magic system. So it has all of this. And then when you scroll lower, it has all of the other information as well, like the full name, the nickname, the age, the gender, the nationality, sexual orientation, data, like everything is here. So I put everything that came up while I was writing that I needed to enter. Okay, so all of that information is here. Obviously, you don't have to fill it all out if it's not relevant to your story, but it's all there in case you need it. The other database that I always have open is my locations database. In my story, there are 3 main kingdoms, and they all have a bunch of like cities and villages. They all have their own landmarks and special regions and stuff. And it is a lot to keep up with, especially while I'm writing. I'm like, wait, what was in this village? Where, like, what is the... So I always have my locations database open. I'll quickly show you what that looks like. So this is like an overview of all of the locations. I've also split them between all locations, continents, countries, kingdoms, cities, villages, regions, whatever you want. When you click into one, you can assign a parent location, a child location, the capital, who the ruler is. So these are all interconnected to other databases in my world building system. So I always have this open so that I know exactly where that location is, what that city has, what landmarks it has. And it's not also only to refer back to this information, but as I'm writing, I discover kind of new places that I want to add into my story. So I just go into these databases. I have these open, so I add the information in there. So any new thing that comes up while I'm writing, I update my world building Bible in real time so that later when I do need to come back to that information, it's already stored neatly in here. So yeah, so that's something else that I should mention. This whole system is not just to fill out before you start writing. The system is so big that I don't think you can. I mean, you can, but it's not ideal to fill everything out before you start writing, because then you might just get lost in world building and never actually start writing. So this is a system that's there to get you started and then to move you forward as you're writing your story. So any new ideas, any new like locations or characters or magic rules or anything about the culture or the society or anything that comes up as you are writing, instead of keeping it in your head, you're like, okay, I'm gonna remember this later, or like writing it in your phone app or writing it in a notebook or writing in Google Docs somewhere, and then you go back to it and you're like, what was I thinking while I was writing this? What was this for? This system just solves that. Okay, as soon as you think about it, you go into the specific database it belongs in and you put it in there. And then it's stored neatly in there for you for later. So the third database that I always have handy while I'm writing is the magic systems database. I will also show you what that looks like. Again, this is not specific to my story. I didn't want to reveal any of the details of my own magic system. So this is just like what's preloaded in the template version of my world building system, but this is what the magic system database looks like. You can put the magic system name in here, the wielder's title, like the type of magic that it is, and it has like drop downs for everything. The source of the power, the specific power that the wielder has. So as you can see, I'm not going to go through each of them one by one, but it also has like a bunch of like prompts to guide you and this and that. So whenever I'm writing a scene where magic is used, I can go back and verify if the rules and limitations that I'm writing about, that they make sense, that there's nothing inconsistent going on, that every time that I use that specific magic, I'm using the same limits and rules that I had talked about at the first mention of that magic system in the story, okay? So it's really, really important for me to have this open. So if you can see here, the magic system is always connected to the character database, so I can see exactly who uses that specific magic system. And again, as I'm writing my story, if there's something new that I want to add, especially if I'm at the beginning of the story and I'm like first writing about the magic system, if there's something new that I think about, I have this ready to fill out so that later on, again, there's no inconsistencies or I haven't forgotten something really cool that I wanted to include. It's all here in this beautiful magic systems database. Okay. I also have a world building database. While I'm writing, I don't have that open. This is something that's super helpful at the beginning of my writing journey to have filled out. But I don't always have this section open. I'll just show you to you quickly what it has. So it has obviously all the prompts again to get you to start world building. And then it has sections for like culture, society, species, races, religions, beliefs, organizations, factions, and locations. Like, so it has an overview of everything. It's nice to have this obviously, but I do not use this every single time that I'm writing. But you do need this to plan out your story. There are a few other things that I always refer back to while I'm writing. One of them is the beat sheet template that I have. If you have never heard of a beat sheet template before, I am here to blow your mind. Just as mine was blown when I first discovered what a beat sheet was. A beat sheet basically consists of all of the major plot points in your story, anything that propels your story forward. And the beat sheet that I use has 15 beats in it, including like the opening image and the inciting incident and, all of the major things that happen in your story that you need to hit so the pacing works. So I always have that open because I need to make sure that I'm hitting all of those beats as I'm writing. And those beats are, if you look at the beat sheet template, they're connected to chapters and scenes. So whatever chapter that I'm writing, I'm like, okay, what kind of beat does this belong to? And yeah, it helps me keep my story very structured. So I always have that open. And then the other thing that I mentioned, so I mentioned that there's like a relation to chapters and scenes in there. So I'm the kind of person who is very organized when I'm writing. I don't necessarily plan out every single scene ahead of time, although the scene planner does exist in my world building template, but I do plan out my chapters ahead of time. I don't go super deep when I'm planning each chapter because I feel like that does take away a little bit of my creativity, and I still want to have something to look forward to when I'm writing my chapter, like excitement and like surprise. But I do plan out in bullet points what each chapter is going to have. So whenever I'm writing, I have that chapter outline open in my world building and story planning system. And I just make sure that the stuff that I've mentioned in the outline, I'm actually writing so I can stay on track. And I'll quickly show you what that looks like as well. Again, I don't know, for anybody tuning in like right now into this video, this is not what my story's chapters are. This is just what I preloaded into the template because, again, I don't want to reveal too much about my story. But if you go in here, chapter planner, you can see that you can assign the characters that are in this chapter, the locations that are part of this chapter, which character POV you're writing from, which beats are part of this chapter. If you want to go granular, you can put the scenes that are part of this chapter. And you research whatever. So this is where essentially I add my bullet points for what each chapter is going to have. And then while I'm writing, I have this open and I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, I did include all of these bullets. A big caveat here, anything that you put in here in your world building system, story planning system, you can change along the way. Nothing is set in stone. This is a digital world building system, which means that you can delete, rewrite, change, adjust as you go. It's not set in stone. You are not like the Flintstones. This is just to guide you to keep your thoughts and your story organized. But if something needs to change, if something is not working, you change it. You adjust as you go. And that's it. So those are all of the things that I rely on every time I have a writing session. Of course, as you probably noticed, there's a lot of other databases included in this as well. Like you can see there's the maps and resources, there's magical creatures. I have a travel and distance calculator that essentially has like a formula in the back end and a bunch of options like for terrain adjustment and for mode of transportation, whatever, so you can calculate the distance between point A and point B realistically. There's like a brainstorming arena, research notes, mood boards. I have like a story overview, timeline of events. That's another great one that I have, which is also available as its own free database. So that's something else. I don't have it open every time I write, obviously, but it was great to have while I was planning, especially like the history of my story. That was great for that. And then every major event that's going to happen. So that's something great to have. I'll quickly show you what that looks like. Again, this is, you can access this for free. I'll link that in the description below. So you have like a timeline view, gallery view, all of this fun stuff. So I will have that linked in the description if you want to download the free version of that. But obviously in the paid version, you can interconnect it to other databases, whereas in the free version, you can't do that. But anyway, so this is what I use. This is what I use to organize all of my chaotic thoughts. This is what I use to dump all of the world building and magic systems and kingdoms and characters and everything that comes to mind. I dump it in there, but it's not dumped onto a single page where it's just going to get lost in the abyss. It's dumped into its own categories, its own databases. Everything's interconnected. My brain can be at ease, and it's not always thinking like, oh, like what was it? What was I thinking about? What was that? Like, did I like where was I supposed to use that? What was that cool thing that I thought about? None of these exists because I put all of the information in the system. And what's cool about the system is that Notion is available on mobile, on tablet, and on your computer. So if I'm thinking about something while I'm away from my computer, which I often do, I just grab my phone, I put that information where it belongs, and that's it. I can access it later on whenever I want. So I know that I talked about my system a lot, but I also want to mention that if you have the drive and the time to create your own world building system in your story planner, Notion, the platform itself, is completely free. I used the basic free version of Notion to create all of this. So I will also mention that, of course, it took me a long time to build. It took me months and months to build the system, but it's also because as I was writing, I'm like, oh, like I need this and I need like this information. Okay, so I built like a database for this and then that and then that. And then within those databases, I created all the properties and the drop downs and the options and this and that. So it took me like a long time to create something that fit like a glove for all of my specific world building and story planning needs as a fantasy writer. So if you have the time and the capability and the drive to do it yourself, it is absolutely doable. Notion does not have a super steep learning curve like some of the other world building apps that I tried to use. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, and it has really powerful database features. You can watch tutorials if you want to understand like how Notion works. I was lucky enough to be using it again. Like I mentioned, I used it at work, so I knew how everything worked already. So the learning curve was essentially zero for me when I started world building. But yeah, if you want to skip the months of template building and you just want to start world building and story planning right away, you also have the option of buying my world building and story planning template, which I will link in the description below. So that is it, my friends. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel. I post videos pretty regularly about world building, character development, magic systems, romantasy writing, all of that fun stuff. And I also want to know what your own world building and story planning journey has been like. If there are any systems that you use that you swear by, or any pain points that you have when it comes to world building. All of that stuff, put it in the comments. I love reading those. I love going through those. I read through all of them. I reply to almost all comments that I get. So yeah, it was so much fun hanging out with you, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks. Bye.